Morning, everybody. Welcome to Golden Marzipan's Season 2, Episode 5 of our breakfast briefings. Sorry, just make sure everybody, it's all being recorded. I guess we've had a huge variety in terms of that. What's one of the things that we've seen in Season 2 is the variety that we've had. We've had academics, we've had practitioners, we have had chief executives, and we've got another first today. We've got our first American guest speaker, and that's Diana Danziger. Diana is an international leadership and organizational development consultant. She's got 2 degrees in organizational psychology, so beware, you know what I mean. She'll be checking everybody out. So no, seriously, she's going to talk to us a little bit about, and I know it's a really hot topic. This we've had a number of people now sign up. We've had to actually close this down. One of the issues is around can you do culture change in a time of Zoom? And Diana's going to give us a few few thoughts and observations around that. Anyway, I know you've not tuned in to listen to me, so I'm going to hand over to Diana. Diana, welcome. Thank you for taking time and joining us. We look forward to hearing your views and observations. Diana, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining in on this breakfast briefing. I'm really delighted to be here and to hear what your experience has been of organizational change in the time of Zoom, as we've called it. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Some slides to guide us. When Peter and I first started talking about this topic, culture change in the time of Zoom, 3 questions came into my mind. Oops. Sorry, technical glitch there. These were the 3 questions. Does organizational culture still exist with a remote workforce? What is the connection between purpose and culture? And what's the leader's role in changing culture? So these are all huge areas. We could talk about them for much longer than we've got. So I'm just going to quickly go through some key points around each of these questions. First question, does organizational culture still exist with a remote workforce? Absolutely, categorically. There's no question. And in fact, organizational culture has been changed because a lot of workforces are working remotely. Zoom has changed how we interact with people, how we see people. It's taken away a lot of what we took for granted of being with other people, with our colleagues. And because people have always worked remotely, even before the pandemic, we know that one of the impacts of working remotely is that people lose a sense of belonging. People who work remotely tend to talk about what I am doing. They talk about themselves, whereas people who work collectively talk much more about we and us. And in fact, one CEO of a company at the start of the pandemic was quoted as saying, "I don't think productivity is going to be a problem here, but a sense of belonging is going to be difficult." And so I'm sure many of you have instituted any number of ideas to help create and sustain that sense of belonging. Some companies have been doing things actually a lot like Golden Marzipan are doing with these breakfast briefings, inviting external speakers in to talk about areas of interest to people in the organization. NatWest Bank, I think it was, they use their internal systems to arrange bedtime story reading sessions for their colleagues who have young children. One of the big issues with working remotely that has a lot to do with culture, which is how do you bring new people on board? Mm-hmm. So a lot of companies have created videos that they've sent out to new starters before they join the organization. They offer mentoring and buddying. There are all sorts of things that can be done to create and sustain that sense of belonging. And what about digital transformation? Because that's been going on all this time as well. And clearly the value of digital transformation, or the importance of thinking about its impact on the culture, is to take the benefits, get the benefits of technological advancement without losing the human touch. And that's really the critical thing. Any organization can buy and implement any technology, but what's not replicable anywhere is the people in the organization. So when you're going through digital transformation, which I know many of you will be, it's really important to keep the focus on two things: employee engagement and stakeholder satisfaction. And I'll say more about those in just a moment. I want to just move on for a moment, though, to talk about the connection between purpose and culture. Purpose, an organization's purpose, it simply answers the question, why do we exist? What's the direction we're going in, and what does the organization stand for? Culture comes from the organization's values and habits. Culture is about how do things get done in the organization, and habits are mostly other people's behaviors. And when you put those two together, referring to what I just said before, if you put purpose and culture together, you'll get some sense of how engaged employees are, and customer and other stakeholder satisfaction. So that's the connection between purpose and culture. It's why we exist, why are we here, and how do we go about doing our business. Now, we don't have a lot of time to talk about the importance of values. I'm sure all the organizations that are represented here have values. It's a tricky area, and you have to be very careful with values. Just to make that point, I'm going to give you a little quiz. We won't have time to hear everybody's answers to these, but something for you to reflect on. Do you know who said this? We remain focused on our enduring values of safety, quality, and integrity in all that we do. Remember, you have any idea who said that?
Yeah.
Well, it was the CEO of Boeing. And he said those very words 5 months before he was fired in the crisis over 2 fatal crashes of their 737 MAX jets. Here's another one. Where would you find this statement? Business integrity underpins everything we do. You find that on the website of Rio Tinto, whose CEO quit shortly after an outcry after they destroyed some sacred Aboriginal sites in Australia. So you have to be careful with values. They're not always reflected in what an organization does. But just to go back for a minute to purpose, a lot of organizations create purpose statements. What is the purpose of a purpose statement? Essentially, it's the anchor, and especially in times of change, times like now when people are working remotely, it's an anchor that both people who work in the organization and stakeholders can hold on to. It connects people's hearts with their heads. One of the organizations I've worked with a lot over many years is Save the Children. Now I don't know if they have a purpose statement or not, but in a way they have it very, very easy, because every decision that gets made in Save the Children can be measured by asking the question, what is this going to do to improve the lives of children? And that's the purpose of purpose. In times of uncertainty, purpose is more important than ever. I listened to a webinar just a couple of months ago. It was a conversation between the CEOs of Nike, UPS, and Korn Ferry, which is a consultancy that does all sorts of work. And these 3 CEOs were asked this question: what's the role of purpose in times of uncertainty? And unanimously, their answer was, in times like these, we don't need to look at our strategy. We know what our strategy is. The what of the organization is clear, but connecting people to what we're doing is critically important. Asking the why question: why should you care? Why should you want to work here? Why do we, fundamentally, why do we exist? And that's the part of connecting the head with the heart. part of the role of purpose is for every individual in the organization to understand, where does what I do fit in this organization? Why is what I'm doing important? It's not easy. I have to tell you, it's not easy to come up with a really meaningful purpose statement. A lot of organizations that I know go through the exercise and come up with something that's not terribly meaningful. But if you're thinking of having a go at this, just some pointers. It needs to be specific about the organization's reason for being, who are the primary beneficiaries of the organization's work, and it needs to be not too abstract, but also not too constraining. And so on to the third thing. What's the leader's role in times of change when people are working remotely? 3 words: communicate, 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 in its absolute broadest sense. Part of which is really listening to understand what is it that's going on for people. So much will have changed for so many people, and regardless of what you think of what their concerns are, you need to understand them so that you can address them. So what are some of the things that a leader can do to support culture change in the time of Zoom? The Vice Chancellor of the University of Wales at Trinity St. David's, I think it was, said very recently, what CEO stands for has changed. The CEO is now the Chief Empathy Officer. And I thought that was a very wise observation, because empathy goes a long way in helping people understand change and helping them get through it. There is no better way for senior leaders and organizations to support changing the culture than by telling the story and keeping on telling it. I know Golden Marzipan, very keen on storytelling. I think you've had a breakfast briefing on storytelling. If you want to bring about change in your organization, write your story, tell people, this is where we're going, this is how I want us to be in 3 to 5 years' time. What are the strengths of the organization that are going to help us get there? What's going to get in our way? What decisions are we going to have to make? Tell the story, keep on telling it, and then stand back and get out of people's way while they make it happen. And finally, ensuring resilience, in both your people and your organization. Change is, we all know, change is really tough on all of us in lots of different ways. People are resilient. People's resilience is based on their emotional, physical, and mental well-being. And you can build resilience in your organization by creating trust, strong relationships, and great leadership. Big words, big areas, but that's really what it's all about. And just some observations about digital transformation itself, because I know that's an important area. Is it culture change by another name? Absolutely. You go back to what I was talking about earlier. Habits in an organization are a big part of the culture. You're changing the way people work. You're asking people to change some of their habits. But it's worth remembering what I said also, that if you're changing the way people work, you're changing the technology that people are using, you have to remember about the human touch. And when I was preparing this talk, I came across an article just from May of this year from the Harvard Business Review. And the title of the article pretty much said it all for me. Digital transformation is about talent, not technology. And to save you having to go and find the article, just some key points that the authors made. Worth remembering to put people first: skills, training, and investment. By its very nature, technical competence is temporary. Of course, technical expertise is in huge demand at the moment, but technology is going to change. It keeps on changing. So in order to prepare for the future, building curiosity and looking for people who are flexibility, who want to keep up, is going to help your organization succeed better in the future. When Peter and I were talking about the title for this, we talked about culture change in the time of Zoom, and we used the time of Zoom as kind of a metaphor for uncertainty, anxiety, not being able to plan very, very thoroughly or carefully, certainly not the way we used to. But the time of Zoom has also created lots of opportunities. And I think it's really important for all of us to remember that there are things that are possible now that just wouldn't have been possible without this time of Zoom. So it's not all negative. There is some positive as well. And what the summary of this article, making that point, is that the mindset, the values, the integrity, and above all, the competence of the most senior leaders will stand out and be the main differentiator between those organizations that succeed and thrive in these times and those that don't. So I've spoken briefly about leadership, purpose, and culture. They really are the cogs that make the organization go round.